and welcome to another episode of That's Absurd. Please elaborate. The science comedy. That's the word I'm looking for. The science show. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Science
To get your science ha-has, you're in the right. You're in the right.
That was an
place.
early draft of the name of the show, but we set it aside because it was just too dumb. Anyway, I'm one of your hosts, Julian Huguet.
And I'm one of the other hosts, which normally there's only two of us, so I guess I don't know why I said it that way. I'm Trace Dominguez.
We should see like how many hosts on average we've had total with all the guests we've had.
Oh.
And be like, one of the hosts and then like the other one, 2 of 2.4 or whatever.
It's just an amalgamation of people stuck together, which actually is a little bit of foreshadowing to my answer this time around.
Know,
so I really like that you went there.
Mine also involves grotesque body modification, so...
Oh my god, really? We did it again. We did it again.
Anyway, for those of you who may be listening for the first time, this is a show where Trace and I, who have backgrounds as science communicators, we take absurd, silly, ridiculous, far-out questions from you, listeners, from each other, from guests hosts. Those are the other 0.4 hosts that we have sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
We do our best to actually find a reliable, realistic answer, no matter how ridiculous the question may be. And the question that'll kick us off this week, well, Trace is the one tackling that one. Trace, what was your question?
That's right. This week, I got a question from Nick, and Nick sent us some audio.
Hi, Trace and Julian. This is Nick Charles from Pasadena, California. Like most people, I've been listening to Nick Lutzko's 2023 classic, Dracula Can Get Wet, about confusing Dracula with the Wicked Witch of the West. When I heard the line, "You can moisturize your feet, it don't matter," about Dracula, I realized that presumably the Wicked Witch of the West can't moisturize her feet, and can't wash herself in any other water-based methods. So, with showers and baths out of the question, how unclean is the Wicked Witch of the West? Thank you, and have fun with that.
I have no idea what Nick is talking about with this Dracula thing.
Should we listen to the song and then come back? I found it, Nick Lutzko on TikTok. Dracula Can Get Wet.
Okay, so I think we should just take a minute and enjoy this.
I said Dracula can't get wet. That was wrong and I regret it. But I'm making up for it. I'm the first one to admit now that Dracula can't get wet. Dracula can't get wet. Oh! Dracula, I'm sorry. I confused you with the witch from the Wizard of Oz. My father called me. He said, how the hell could you mess up this?
Honestly, this is a banger. I love it.
It's a bop.
That's great. That's really good.
So apparently he made a song earlier called Dracula Can't Get Wet.
Can get wet.
And
And,
he
now
had
he's
to-
made a follow-up.
He had to issue a correction in the form of a song.
Honestly,
That's
I love it.
amazing. It makes sense, right? Like when the newspapers like the New York Times have a misprint or something, you have to print a correction. Same like you air on a TV news broadcast. I guess if the medium is song, you'd have to issue an apology in song form, which is incredible.
That's right. I mean, honestly, applause to them for their integrity. Because a lot of people in even some science communication circles get things wrong and then just move on.
We're not going to
and
address
I
it.
Don't like it.
I love it. Also, I appreciate it because I was listening to that episode we did with Simon recently where we have all the different vampire myths. And Simon just had like a dozen that I hadn't heard yet. And so I feel like at this point I'm so primed. If somebody told me Dracula can't get wet, I would believe it. So I appreciate he corrected that.
Yeah, same. So the Wicked Witch of the West and bathing. This is an interesting question. It really appealed to me, Nick, so thank you for asking it. Especially as, I don't know if you know this about me, Julian, I have read all of the Oz books multiple times.
I'm not surprised. Like, this is new information to me, but I'm not surprised. No.
When I was in 5th grade, I could put a tiny paper plate. We made like a snake out of them, a whole class. And so every book you read, you could write down the book and add a little teeny paper plate to the snake. And it went all over the room and on the ceiling and all sorts of stuff because we read so many books. There are 14 Wizard of Oz books, and I read them at least once in their entirety in my 5th grade year, but probably other years as well. So, yeah, 14 different Wizard of Oz books, all written by L. Frank Baum.
Wow.
The first one was released in 1900, and the 14th was released in 1920 after he had died.
Gosh, I just realized we've been deprived of an Oz cinematic universe.
We really have been. I mean, there are several Oz films that have been made and some spin-offs, like The Wiz and Wicked are spin-offs sort of Oz. I think of Wicked, by the way. Most people, when they think about Oz, they think about the movie, Wizard of Oz, the old school one with Judy Garland. Big deal. First Technicolor film, really important for the film industry and also just a good movie. But I'm going to focus mostly on the books, the source material. It was focused on this adventure story. And so that way it keeps it simple.
Okay.
Also, the movies are all a bit of a mess. Like, they don't really align. And I'm not going to talk about Wicked at all. And nothing against Wicked. It's very good, but it's not really Oz. It's more of a parody or a fan fiction of Oz using the characters of Oz, but in a completely different way and making stuff up, ignoring established plot points that the source material had. It's basically incompatible with much of the source material, and I'm not here to poop on it. I think Wicked is excellent, and the music is fun, and I really love it, and I've seen it on stage, and I really enjoyed it, and I've read the book rather, but because it would get confusing if we tried to bring the Elphaba version of the Wicked Witch of the West into this, I think that would be too much. Not to mention that she, in Wicked, gets a little spicy with one of the other characters, and just the implications there of being that we're water based. Anyway, it would just be messy if she melts when in contact.
If she were to become wet.
There was a really good write-up by Straight Dope about the Wicked Witch of the West and just Oz in general and some of the lore, but it heavily referenced the annotated Wizard of Oz that was released in 1973, which I also reference here. And the idea here, if you're unfamiliar, somehow you've missed the cultural touchstone that is the Wicked Witch of the West. She is a character from the Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is a story about a young girl named Dorothy who is in Kansas, and she and her entire house is picked up by a tornado and dropped into Oz, which is a fantasy land surrounded by desert that you cannot get to without magic or apparently flight. When she is dropped into Oz, she lands on a wicked witch and crushes this person, and the Wicked Witch in the film, at least, the little legs roll up. But either way, this Wicked Witch had special shoes on. In the book, they're actually silver slippers. I'll come back to why in a minute. In the film, they're ruby slippers, and that's because ruby red or just red stood out in Technicolor better, so they made it red because they knew we were going to film it in color, and they wanted that bright red, but in the books, it's actually silver slippers. But anyway, she kills the Wicked Witch of the East, and the Wicked Witch of the West is really mad, and she has to go, defeat the Wicked Witch of the West. It's not really that kind of a story, but it doesn't matter. That's essentially what you need to know here. The Wicked Witch of the West is defeated in the book by Dorothy throwing an entire bucket of water on her. And then what does she say, Julian?
Oh no! A small amount of water! Who could have foreseen this? It's been a while since I've seen the movie. I think that's it. No, of course it's I'm melting!
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in the book, it's written like this. The witch began to shrink and fall away. See what you have done, she screamed. In a minute, I shall melt away. I am very sorry indeed, said Dorothy, who was truly frightened to see the witch actually melting away like brown sugar before her eyes. Didn't you know water would be the end of me? Asked the witch in a wailing, despairing voice. Of course not, answered Dorothy. How should I? The witch turned to that brown, melted, shapeless mass, and then Dorothy took a second bucket of water that just happened to be around, I guess, threw it over the mess and swept it all out the door, and the Wicked Witch of the West was gone.
Hose the witch off.
Yeah, just hose it down, sweep it out over the threshold, and move on.
This entire person. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, I think, because this is such an important cultural moment. I would say prior to something like Star Wars, I'm melting and the Wicked Witch of the West melting was probably like that same, I am your father kind of moment from Star Wars. Like, it was just such a big deal in film because you don't have a lot of these adventure stories, this kind of adventure story. So it's really cool. So we're here to talk about cleanliness. And cleanliness, when it comes to ourselves, we usually think about washing with water. And that's where Nick's question comes from, right? Can this witch, who is melted by this bucket of water in the book, how does she keep herself clean? So a little more background on Oz. In Oz, there are actually 4 witches. There's Glinda the Good. She lives in the south. Oz is divided into 4 quadrants. Munchkin Land, the Wadkin Land. Like, it doesn't matter for this answer. But there's another good witch that isn't named in the books, but Baum later made a stage musical adaptation of The Wizard of Oz and named her Lucasta. And then there are 2 evil witches, the Wicked Witch of the West, who does not have a name, unless you're reading Wicked, the fan fiction. And then a second unnamed witch, the Wicked Witch of the East. Again, no name. They are not sisters or related. And in the book, they are both killed.
Wow.
In the very first book. And again, there are 14 books. So he had to come up with other bad guys and other bad girls, I guess, in this storyline. So you've got Mombi the Witch. You've got the Gnome King who tries to conquer Oz. And you've got all these other baddies.
I just want to point out the hilarity that the protagonist, though, is a woman who shows up in this new neighborhood, kills somebody within 5 minutes, and then loots her body. And that's who we're rooting for.
Yeah, and then when Dorothy does kill the final antagonist, washes her off the floor and sweeps her out the door. Dorothy is a little bit of a sociopath,
maniac.
like, clearly.
Absolute. She's building an army of inanimate men and beasts.
And animals, yes.
To upset the established order of a foreign land.
And really, that's what she's doing. She's basically, a government stooge.
She's a metaphor for imperialism, I think.
There are a lot of metaphors in this book, actually. Since you bring it up, the book was released in 1900, as I mentioned. And at the time, it was probably an allegory of the populist politics of the 1890s.
Oh, nailed it.
So at the time, the populists were growing in power. The workers were partnering across different lines. Like, urban workers were partnering with farmers against corporate interests and banks. And so Dorothy is supposed to be, they think, the everyman. And then the urban worker in rusty old factories is the Tin Man, and then a farmer with no brain is the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion is actually William Jennings Bryan, a presidential candidate.
Oh. Wait, William Jennings Bryan, wasn't he the guy who argued against evolution at the Scopes monkey trial?
I believe so, yes. But also was a presidential candidate.
A three-time presidential candidate. But he was also really well known for being a farmer's advocate and for, getting off the gold standard. Wow, that was deep in my brain
that's
somewhere.
why the yellow brick road is a reference to the gold standard, and the silver slippers are a reference to William Jennings Bryan and the populist movement's interest in moving to a silver standard instead of the gold standard.
And the flying monkeys are the evolutionists. It all makes sense. Wow.
So, really wild. So I'm glad you brought that up.
It's so funny how often, we forget that media is written by, people with a point of view that have something to communicate, and then when it's, 100 years removed from that context, it might make no sense
We don't have
whatsoever.
any of that. Right, but at the time when it came out, it probably was a very politically active book. People read it and they were like, "Oh, I see what Baum is saying here." The interesting thing is, obviously, William Jennings Bryan didn't become a president, and the person who did become a president, William McKinley, wasn't a populist, but was able to essentially rein in this movement. So it was kind of the end of the populist movement. So even just a short time later, it wouldn't have made as much political weight as it did at the time it was released. But really interesting, and obviously, L. Frank Baum ended up writing a bunch of other books about this. And in this area.
McKinley later got shot, which I learned of in another musical called Assassins. Musicals are so educational about American history, apparently.
They really are. We have a lot of really good musical history. So anyway, we're back to the books, The Wizard of Oz. In the movie, the witch flies on a broom. But in the book, she has an umbrella because she wants to avoid water. In the movie, she seems like this ugly green human person. In the book, there's actually no mention of her being green. It was likely just a thing that people did at the time. Likely, again, I don't know, but maybe because of Technicolor. And then, of course, in both the book and the film, Dorothy does kill both witches.
She kills 2 bad witches, which is bad.
She kills 2 bad witches, which is big deal. The book does mention a little more information about these wicked witches, though. They are, quote, very, very old. They are wicked, clearly. And other writings established in the book and elsewhere show that the wicked witches may be holding themselves together with dark magic. So L. Frank Baum notes that Glinda the Good was magically making herself young. In the movie, she's the good witch of the north, but in the book, she's actually in the south, and then there was a different witch in the north. The movie, they just simplified and were like, no, there's just one good witch and 2 bad ones. The wicked witch of the east turned to dust because her magic was broken. She'd been crushed, and so she turns into dust. And they described it as she was so old that she dried up quickly in the sun. When the Wicked Witch of the West is described, she's also described as dried up. So there is actually a point in the book where the Wicked Witch of the West captures Dorothy, and Dorothy is in the castle with her, and the witch wants to steal the silver slippers, and Dorothy has to take a bath, and so she takes them off. She leaves them in her room. The Wicked Witch of the West, for some reason, is afraid of the dark, and that is mentioned. But also, she doesn't want to go in there because, quote, her dread of water was greater than her fear of the dark. So she never came near when Dorothy was bathing. And indeed, the old witch never touched water, nor ever let water touch her in any way, which is really interesting.
Okay.
And hold on to that for a second. So at another point, the book says that the Wicked Witch of the West hit Toto the dog, Dorothy's dog, with her umbrella. Again, she doesn't carry a broom in the book. She carries an umbrella to keep water off of her. And brave Toto, quote, flew at her and bit her leg. The witch did not bleed where she was bitten because she was so wicked that the blood in her had dried up many years before.
So she's a corpse. She's a walking corpse.
She's basically an animated corpse.
Ah!
Really interesting. So this all makes a lot of sense when it comes to her melting, which I wanted to understand a bit why she would melt when touching water, right? But the thing is, it's actually not just in Oz where witches hate water. So that kind of brings us back to Nick's initial reference to Dracula hating water. Because witches have hated water since forever, basically. The famous Scottish poet, one of my favorite, Robbie Burns, wrote a poem in 1790 titled Tam O'Shanter, and he says, "It is a well-known fact that witches, or any evil spirits, have no power to follow a poor wight any further than the middle of the next running stream." And in the poem, a man escapes a witch by riding a horse over a stream, and the witch can't follow him because it can't cross water. So this was 100 years prior to this book written. So it could just be that L. Frank Baum was continuing this thing that maybe we've forgotten, that witches shouldn't touch water. Also, water is associated with things like baptism. And in real life, this dates back to even earlier, like the 1500s. Witches were tested by ordeals with water. This was done up into the 1690s in the Salem witch trials, where they would be like, "You're a witch! We're going to see if you float in the water. And if we tie you up and you float in the river, then you're guilty of being a witch. And if you sink, you're innocent of being a witch, but you're also dead."
Yeah, guilty of being dead.
So, again, having a witch be destroyed in some way or, like, harmed by water is quite an old idea that we seem to have sort of, I wouldn't say forgotten, but, like, I don't think of Hocus Pocus as, like, they're worried about rain. Like, or Hocus Pocus 2, the excellent sequel to Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus 2, poke harder.
Poke harder.
Poke us harder.
I like it. Focus. Hocus Pocus 2, the Focus Mocus. So, knowing how the Wicked Witch of the West cleaned herself is a little strange because it's hard to think about this magical animated corpse. Or actually, I have a theory about what she might be, and I'm not going to go with corpse, but I like that idea because she didn't have any water in her body. She didn't have blood. She wasn't touching any water, and science isn't really prepared to know what would happen there, right? Like, we do have some studies of things that are essentially very dry, which I'll come right back to. But Oz was one of the, like, original fandoms. There is a regular publication called The Baum Bugle, and it's like fan fictions about The Wizard of Oz, and it started publishing in 1957, and it is still being published to this day. The most recent issue was 2023, which is incredible. And in 1969, the Baum Bugle had an essay by Dr. Douglas A. Rossman titled On the Liquidation of Witches. And in this Baum Bugle, he argues that hydrolysis is the reason she melted. Normally, the molecules of a substance, or witch, stick to each other, a phenomenon called adhesion. However, adhesion may be broken down by water or some other powerful force, such as a house falling out of the sky. The witch has no blood or other bodily fluid. Little is holding her molecules together. The water breaks down the weak adhesion of her body so that she melts away, similar to the way sugar dissolves in water. Similarly, the impact of Dorothy's house landing on the Wicked Witch of the East breaks down the adhesion so she crumbles to dust.
It reminds me of, I was looking over my wife's shoulder when she was taking these biology classes, and I was surprised. We've all heard the your body's 60% water or something like that, and that makes sense. But what really made it hit home was because so many reactions in your body depend on water either forming as molecules combine or water breaking those molecules apart with hydrolysis.
Exactly.
Yeah, when you look at a lot of molecules in your body, we've talked about this multiple times, but phospholipids and fats, right, are basically on one end of the fatty acid, you've got an OH, and then on the phosphorus part, you've got an O, and then when you combine them, or another H, and when you combine them together, out comes H2O, and then it's stuck together.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing in reverse.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that water would break a step down. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff in our body is saturated with water. And without water, we lose 60 or 70% of our body mass. And actually, I looked up what a dried human body would be, and it's mostly denatured proteins, salts, fat structures, of course bones, which Baum doesn't mention at all. And you just,
so if she's hosing, she's got to hose the bones out.
Yeah, got to sweep the bones out of the way. So let's stick to the science for a bit before we come back to the end of fantasy. So you can essentially use oils to clean your body. So maybe if hydrolysis is your problem, use something that's not water if it's a chemical process, right? Just don't have water touching your skin. Use instead an essential oil. And hopefully, I don't know the chemistry of the Wicked Witch of the West, but perhaps they could use an essential oil, which is pretty common in places where water is scarce or used mostly for other things. You can use essential oils to keep yourself clean. You could use wipes that contain alcohol, and that, again, not water. Just because something is water soluble doesn't mean it's soluble in other things like oils and alcohols. You can also just rub, scrub the skin with a brush physically. These are perfectly legitimate and used ways to clean the body around the world. Dry scrubs can even be for some people more beneficial, like people who have skin disorders or really severe allergies to some of the things that we use for soaps in things like cleansers. So you don't have to wet the skin at all. You just use a dry brush, though the brush does need to be cleaned. So you'd have to eventually get your flying monkeys, I guess, to wash it for you, because the witch wouldn't be able to do it. But I don't know.
Well, another thing I'm thinking of too is we've talked about this before, how when you dry out meat, it preserves it because it kills the bacteria, or when it's salty too, right?
Yeah.
It kills that bacteria.
I love that you went there. Yeah.
how much of our body odors and things that we associate with us being stinky people is actually generated by
the stuff,
microorganisms.
Yeah, the stuff living on us. Exactly.
On us.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned salt. That's what I was thinking of too. Water is very reactive. It's highly polar. It reacts with molecules, which hydrolysis and allows them to dissolve. Whereas oils and fats are nonpolar, so they might not pull those molecules apart. They may not react as easily. I really dove into the brown sugar comment about her melting because sucrose is polar. So polar water molecules attract the negative and positive areas in the sucrose molecules, and that's what allows sugar to dissolve in water at all. However, if the witch isn't made of the same things that we're made of, maybe her molecules aren't polar. Maybe she's made of sand and dust and silicates. So just as a reminder, Oz is totally surrounded by desert, which is super interesting. So perhaps the desert, which by the way is called the wasting sands and the shifting sands, basically if you touch the desert on the edge of Oz, you turn into sand and die. So perhaps she is an evil magic animated desert thing. So she's not even really a person. She just looks like one. And that would make sense why she wouldn't want to touch water. But also that if the witch is made of sand, sand is not generally polar, but the salts in her would be something that would keep her from having to worry about being cleaned because she's very salty. So like a lot of things wouldn't live in her. However, there was a study in the Society for General Microbiology that found that desert sands are actually held together by bacteria. The sands of the Kalahari Desert of Botswana are full of cyanobacteria, which are drought resistant and fix atmospheric carbon dioxide and provide significant quantities of organic matter to the nutrient deficient sands. So maybe she's held together in part by cyanobacteria as well.
She's unnamed because she's actually just a big colonial organism. She's like a walking Portuguese man-o-war thing. She's 10 trillion bacteria in a trench coat.
If you had put her in a jar under your sink, you could have made kombucha from her.
The kombucha witch of the West.
That's her real name. They call her Elphaba in Wicked, but her real name's Kombucha. So all of those kind of bring me back to, if you never showered again, what would happen, right? Let's assume that you aren't the Wicked Witch of the West, you're just you. And we just talked about this recently, or sort of the opposite of it. You can be too clean. So in this case, it's what if you're too dirty, right? They say like an abrasion on your skin would allow bacteria that were living on your skin in, and it would, you get sicker or more infected, and you might smell, you might, I don't know, look gross or something. But generally, you'd probably be fine. A man named James Hamblin slowly, over a period of months, stopped using deodorant, showering, or bathing in any way to write a book. After 5 years of not showering or using any kind of personal hygiene products...
Was the book about not showering, or was he just focused on his book?
The book was about not showering.
I just imagine thinking
it was just like, I was working so hard, I didn't even think about it.
I've got the next Godfather book, right? I have to focus. And then just 5 years later, his wife being like, please, I am begging you. I am begging you.
That's so funny.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he wrote about it. He wrote in like a meta way about writing the book and how he didn't wash himself for 5 years. And he said, at first it was gross and it felt weird, but after a little while you get used to it and then your body just starts to change. And after 5 years, he said he didn't really smell bad. And that was corroborated by people he spent time with. He wasn't more likely to get skin rashes or eczemas or breakouts unless he was very stressed out. And then he could connect some of the things that were happening in his body to actually his mental state and his stress and his amount of sleep, which was really interesting. He also, and I want to be clear about this, said, quote, "I'm a white male who looks generally healthy. I'm relatively young and I can afford to buy clothes that aren't tattered and to wash my clothes regularly. I'm employed and literate and fluent in the dominant local language." So he didn't get a lot of pushback for deciding to not shower for a long time. But his partner said after a while was like, he didn't smell like BO. He just smelled like a regular person, like anybody else. Personally, I have a connection to this as well in that in 1998, I was in Scouts and I went to Philmont, New Mexico to a camping trip. Basically, it's a backcountry camping. You bring everything with you, you carry all your food and water. And I was just in the backcountry for a month. And there's no showers because there are bears. And so you're not supposed to use deodorant. You're not supposed to brush your teeth particularly often. And if you do, you have to rinse your mouth out a lot. Bears will come and like smell you and be like, oh, that's a new smell. I don't know what that is. I'll go figure it out. And I found exactly what James is saying here. Absolutely true. At first, like for the first couple of weeks, it was really gross. But by the 4th, 5th week, like I felt normal. My hair looked normal. Like I wasn't like all oily. I just was normal and I hadn't showered in a month.
Well, you don't think you just became like inured to the scent though or anything?
I do think some of it is you become habituated to it. But I also think just personally, the first time I did shower, it felt incredible. Like I was really like ridding myself of a lot of oil that had built up on my skin, but I didn't feel oily prior to that moment. So I think it's like, it is probably somewhat you're getting used to it, but some of it is I did feel like my hair was different after a couple of weeks of not showering. Like my hair just wasn't as oily because it wasn't like, maybe it wasn't making as much oil. I don't know. This isn't scientific. This is just my experience, but it was really interesting and it really stood out to me at that time. Like I thought, wow, my hair does not look like this normally. When I shower, I would shower every day or every other day. I'm a teenager. And like, my hair I'd have to go and like do something to it. This I didn't. I could just like do my hair weirdly in the back country of New Mexico, and just, it was fine.
See, when I was a teenager, I just didn't shower a lot because I was gross. And from what you're saying, like, that's not the reason I was single all through high school. There was something else going on.
It might have been something else.
Damn
I can't. I don't want to speak to that
Is
necessarily.
it my personality? It's the only thing left.
I want to wrap it up here and say, Nick, I think to answer your question, we have to think about Oz as a magical place where potentially this Wicked Witch isn't a human, but is instead an animated, body-like, sand, silicate, salty thing that doesn't necessarily grow a lot of bacteria on it. And if it does, it's growing bacteria that is maybe fixing it together. Additionally, I think there's just this one thing that we don't think about much when we think about Oz, and that is that Oz, again, is magical. And because it's magical, no one in Oz can die, ever. You can be hungry and not die, and there are characters in Oz that are inanimate objects that have been animated, like Pumpkinhead and his sawhorse, and the Gump, which is a moose head attached to a couch. The Mechanical Man TikTok. I swear to God, that's a real...
What in hundreds political figure does Gump represent?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Probably rich, aristocratic class or something.
Wait, he's a what head on a couch?
It's a moose head, like a moose head
That's gotta be
trophy.
Teddy Roosevelt.
I mean, yeah, maybe it is.
It has to be.
She's friends with Dorothy, so maybe. And William Jennings Bryan was a Democrat, and Teddy's a Republican, so it's possible that Baum wrote it that way. I don't know. I hadn't actually read anything about that. So in one of the 14 books, eventually in the book series, you get to like books that are about specific characters. So the Scarecrow of Oz, the Tin Man of Oz, TikTok of Oz has his own book. In the book, the Tin Woodsman of Oz, Nick Chopper is the Tin Woodsman's name. Very unique name.
Wow.
An
That's
enchanted
so on the
axe.
nose.
Yeah, a little too much. The enchanted axe he found forced him to cut parts of his body off. Seriously, that's the story. He's in love with this woman. He starts cutting parts of his body off, and a tinsmith helps him forge new parts for his body. And he cuts all of the parts of his body off and eventually has to remove his heart. A witch forces him to do it, and he was no longer in love with this woman, so he just left. He wanders off into the woods. A rainstorm rusts him up, and then Dorothy finds him later. He gets a new heart. He goes back to the partner, found his original head that he had chopped off, still alive. Because nothing dies in Oz. And so, long story short, the tinsmith who had helped him by replacing his body parts had glued his body parts back together with another dude who was a lover of his former partner who had also been chopped into pieces.
What?
And they glued all these parts back together, and she married that Frankenstein monster of the two men she ever loved because they were still alive. And it's very weird, and it's just that nothing dies in Oz. So now imagine bacteria. If they don't die, we're in trouble. So I actually think she's not unclean. There just aren't any. There just aren't bacteria in Oz. There are no pathogens.
The other is there's no point because they don't die apparently. So
yeah, like what's the bacteria for? There's no decay. There's no illness. I guess it would help break down food in your gut. Like now, we didn't know that in 1900, but either way. So she may not have been super clean by our standards, but she wasn't really germy either because she's a salty silicate magic being in a place where nothing dies.
This is not where I was expecting this to go. Much like the Wizard of Oz.
Very weird.
So I interpret this to also mean then that the Wicked Witch is still out there as just like a vengeful pile of goo.
That's a really good point because she is described as dead, and there are characters, I swear to God, there are characters in this book that are chopped into little pieces, and Dorothy finds like one of their eyes, and it's like blinking at them. And she has to like find all the parts again. I read this book when I was a child, so obviously this stood out to me. But yeah, people just don't die. Also, all animals can talk, so Toto eventually talks in the book series. Something else, funnily enough, just to wrap this up because I think it's interesting. Dorothy eventually comes back to Oz again and again and again. She eventually moves to Oz. She meets Ozma in the third book.
Does she find a way to travel that doesn't involve crushing people every time she shows
does,
up?
yes.
Okay.
Usually it's magic. She falls into an earthquake once. She falls off a boat boat, I think, on the way to Australia with Auntie Em, which is surprising. She brings both her aunt and uncle with her to Oz at one point, and they live there forever. The Scarecrow has such a good brain that he gets into Oz's government and becomes the king of Oz, and Ozma is the princess of Oz, and she was in a neighboring land called Eve, and she has to go, Dorothy goes and saves her. It's a really good book series. It's really weird.
Yeah. To outsiders,
fantasy adventure.
Every time they travel to Oz, it just must look like they're committing like mass suicide or something.
Oh, it's gotta be
quick.
weird. Yeah.
Jump into this like chasm in this earthquake.
Yeah, it's really wild. It's a wild
okay.
story. So, that's a lot. Point being, thank you, Nick, for this question. Because I really got to relive a lot of my childhood. Like, the fandom, my first fandom, really, was this. So, thanks for that.
I learned a lot more about the Wizard of Oz than I ever thought I would. So, also thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have my question.
Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh, God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
You know, we think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And, this is super cool, many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like, I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out.
Well, welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. Wow. We just, wow. I mean, how do you follow up on a salty silicate witch? I think your question incredibly does actually. Maybe is somehow weirder.
It's weird. It's a question that I feel like the answer would only be possible in the land of Oz, now that I know more. But let's get into it. This comes from Isaiah in Quebec. And Isaiah asks, if you were to blow up a person like a balloon, how big would we need to get before we can fly under our own power? And he says,
God.
Feel free to use your lungs, helium, basic atmosphere, whatever gas, assume whatever altitude makes this question more interesting. I love when I'm just handed free rein to be like, hey, You know what? No restrictions. Go for it.
In my mind, I'm just like, they're telling us, like, this is your show. You can do whatever you want. And we're like, we know.
And we do.
And we will.
But so, I don't know, just the image of like an inflated human was very funny to me. I always think of like that scene in Shrek where they blow up the frog and the snake and then like have cute little swamp animal balloons. Yeah. And then release them and they just float off into the sky.
Who knows what happens to them? Nobody cares. They're lower animals. That's fine.
Talk about magical worlds where nobody can die, though, right? You think in fairy tale land? Okay, depends on, like, if we're talking old German fairy tales or, like, modern American retellings. Because old German fairy tales, everybody dies.
Everybody's dying all the time.
Constantly being murdered. Reimagining, I bet they're still up there somewhere. But I kind of started there thinking about, like, looking into animals that do inflate. What does one or two come to mind immediately for you? Because one does for me.
Pufferfish.
Exactly.
Is the first one that comes to mind. And then like a frog. But it's not really inflating as much as it's like,
yeah. It's a little throat pouch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also went pufferfish immediately, and I was like, you know what? What adaptations allow the pufferfish to puffer?
Expand. Yeah. Like, how does it do that?
Yeah. And it turns out it's fascinating.
Oh!
Yeah. And it
Please
also
elaborate.
is where the beginnings of our problems start for our human balloons.
Oh, no.
Okay, so here's a cool adaptation of the pufferfish. First of all, Trace.
Yeah.
When you think of a fish, typically, is the fish you're picturing, does it have lungs?
No, it has gills. And
No,
and
it has gills. It might have some sort of air sac, right?
yeah, like a bladder that
Yeah.
it can move up and down in the water if it wants,
Yes.
using its bladder.
Yes, a lot of fish, but not all. It depends on what kind of group they're in. But a lot of fish have swim bladders, which is a little gas-filled sac that they can either expand or contract, and that changes their buoyancy. This is based on Archimedes' principle that when you're in a fluid, and fluid encompasses liquids and gases. So if you're in a fluid, there is a buoyant force equal to the amount of that fluid you're displacing, to the weight of it. Okay?
Yeah.
So pufferfish, though, they don't puff up using that swim bladder that they have.
Huh?
Yeah.
They don't?
No. And it frankly makes a lot of sense because imagine you were a pufferfish, right? And
Yeah.
you get attacked by some predator, and so you puff up. Imagine if it was a gas balloon that you were rapidly expanding.
You're right. The more I think about it, the stupider
underwater.
it sounds. I get
What's
it.
going to happen
I'm
to
gonna
this
go
pufferfish?
really fast up toward the
Yeah,
surface of the
you
water like a buoy.
You would rocket to the surface, which would be really cool.
It would be
But
cool. Get you out of there.
It's not what's happening. Yeah, or unless you're like, oh, heaven forbid, you're in like a cave or something like that, and you just get pinned to the ceiling of the cave.
Now you're really messed up. Yeah. Uh-oh.
No.
Also, where would it get all that air? You
Yes.
know, like it's either compressing it, in which case it is constantly fighting that buoyancy, which seems bad, or it has to filter it from the water, which is, I assume, how normal swim bladders work. In which case you'd have to filter a lot of it really fast, which would essentially mean that the pufferfish is like inhaling really quick, which is not how fish work. Yeah, you're right. The more I think about this, the stupider I felt.
It's
The stupider I feel about it.
it's not a good idea for it to be puffing up with air. So what they're actually doing is they're gulping in copious amounts of the water around them, and it's going into their stomach, right? So that way, because they're taking in, the stuff that they're floating in, they don't change.
They stay
in
where
their
they are.
density, right, by comparison to what's around them. So it's a lot easier for them to control it. Although they're not great swimmers when they're all puffed up. They're not great swimmers when they're not puffed up either. They're kind of like boxcar shaped. They're very silly looking, unpuffed up as well. But anyway, so they fill up the stomach, but that of course means that the stomach is going to need to be able to expand to take in all of this water very quickly, right? So
like a lot.
Yes. So pufferfish stomachs have a lot of like folds and pleats and stuff, so they can expand rapidly, right? Because the tissue, otherwise you'd have to like be generating more tissue, or like stretching it somehow, but there's a limit to how much you can have, your bodily tissues can expand. So no, it's all folded up. And then on top of that, you've got to consider it's more than just the stomach that's going to be affected. So like us, they have a layer of cells that protects their organs inside their body cavity called the peritoneum. And that around their stomach area is also folded up a lot, like an accordion. And so when the stomach expands, the peritoneum can also expand. Now,
But what note on the accordion would it sound like
I think it would sound like
when it did that?
if you squeeze them real fast.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Now I'm picturing a like a Little Mermaid band, but somebody's just squeezing the pufferfish.
Yeah. Oh, poor Puffy.
So yeah, they have a stomach and a peritoneum that's a lot bigger than it is when they're shrunken up, but it's all folded up so it can fit in their little compact bodies. They're also missing ribs.
Oh, I mean, that makes sense.
Now that I say it out loud, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, the pufferfish.
How many?
All of them?
What?
I didn't mean like one or two. No.
I thought you meant like one or two.
No, not like Marilyn Manson. No, they just have no ribs.
Marilyn Manson. Stop it.
They just don't. Yeah, they don't have any ribs or a pelvis.
What?
Yeah. No.
What are they made of?
They've got a spine. They're vertebrates, but just like the area that other fish have protected by a rib cage and that gives them structure, but also makes it very rigid. Yeah, they don't have that. So they can just puff up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something interesting.
That's fun.
It's really cool. It turns out, I love always pointing out opportunities to show that evolution is a tinkerer. Because it might seem really strange, like, how does all this happen for this pufferfish? Like, how did this come about? And scientists think that the gulping water quickly technique that they used originally came from a way that fish they're related to use to cough. Like if a fish has something in its mouth that's stuck in there, these fish that are related to pufferfish, we can still observe this. They'll take in a bunch of water into their stomach, and then they'll squeeze their stomach, and it shoots the thing that's stuck in their mouth out.
I honestly had never thought about a fish having something caught in its mouth.
Yeah.
It's just like... and you're like, Craig, what's wrong with you?
Breathe, Craig.
Come on, Craig. What did you eat, man?
No, we're going to have to do CPR, but it's
CPR.
SEA.
SEA.
CPR.
PR. Oh, God. Oh, no. No, it was just one of those flakes. It was a little too big.
Yeah.
It was a little too big.
Way too, I shouldn't have, got to take it easy. Oh, you're a mess, Craig. Get your fish life together. Yeah,
Craig.
So pufferfish, great example of that. So there's other animals that have inflatable organ sac things that aren't lungs. There's a bird called the greater sage grouse that has these two big like air sacs, and when the male is like trying to attract mates, it'll puff them up and then like deflate them really quickly. It's very silly looking.
Weird looking. It's weird. I don't like it.
It's what the ladies are into. There's frigate birds. They have a big red neck pouch, the males, that they'll inflate when they want to attract females. There's hooded seals, which I thought are very interesting for where I'm going with this. They have a big kind of fleshy hood on top of their head, and inside is a membrane that they can inflate. It just looks like a giant red like bubble coming out of their nose. It's really off-putting looking.
Oh, I don't like it.
Yeah, no, it's gross.
Biology is so gross.
Yeah, but then it contracts when it's not inflated. It goes into like this hood, this very soft, floppy kind of hood structure on the top of their heads. I know.
It's so weird looking. I Googled it. It's weird. Oh my gosh.
But they use it as a mating display, right? Because they're out on like pack ice. So when there's this big red balloon there, like the females can see it from a distance and be like, oh,
very
or they
bright.
can use it to ward off other rival males. Be like, look at how big my balloon is, you know?
Ugh.
You don't want none of this. Yeah, so it turns out like inflatable animals, fairly common. Of course, we are not one of those. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's, we have ribs, so our...
Yeah, and a pelvis.
And a pelvis. I don't know.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I don't know if the pelvis is so much of an issue necessarily for inflating, but like if we wanted to expand our lungs bigger, right? The rib cage is a massive barrier, literal barrier for that.
Yeah.
But the trade-off is it protects your ribs and your heart and also gives you structure, right? Like pufferfish are supported by the water they're in, so they don't need to be able to resist the crushing force of gravity like we do.
Yeah, not in the same way. They have that water pressure, but they're also filled with water if they want to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, so if you were to expand a human, you might have to get into some pretty extreme body modification. Oh, another thing about the pufferfish, their stomach basically doesn't work.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
how do they eat?
It doesn't digest stuff. Their intestinal tract has to do more of the heavy lifting for breaking down and absorbing nutrients than their stomach does. Which kind of makes sense. If they're like
that makes sense.
filling it up with salt water all the time, I imagine the pH is going to drop a lot. They're basically diluting their stomach acid like crazy every time that they puff up. So that might be something we'd sacrifice. If we're going the pufferfish route of like inflating our stomachs, which are not,
not very big.
They're
very stretchy. They can't. The actual organ can stretch a lot, right? It's something I can't remember how many times it can stretch, but it's a lot. But
like a pufferfish, it's got folds and pleats. So like when there isn't actual food, another one of my least favorite words, when there isn't a bolus of digested material in there, it's all shrunken up, but then it expands as you eat stuff. So possibly maybe we could co-opt this strategy if we wanted to like actually inflate, but we're running into the same problem that the pufferfish has when it just gulps a lot of water, right? Our goal is flight.
Yeah.
And the pufferfish, by just taking in seawater from its surroundings, is not becoming less dense than its surroundings.
Okay.
So we can't just basically Kirby it and suck in a whole bunch of air and then be able to float. We'd have the same density as still be a lot more dense than the air around us.
Yeah, there's a lot of human mass still.
Mm-hmm. We'd be less dense overall. You might feel lighter if you were able to expand with a bunch of air, but you're not going to be lighter than the air around you and therefore float.
Right.
So we have to look to actual lighter than air ships, I think, for kind of our next direction that we would pursue. And yes, I know I've made it about aviation again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I didn't even see this one coming, though.
I know. You should always suspect it. But yeah, I looked into, okay, well, what's the principle that allows airships to fly? And it is that Archimedes principle of you need to displace enough air so that air provides a buoyant lifting force that counteracts gravity.
Right.
And I thought about it, and I had a brainwave, and I thought I was very clever, and then it turns out I'm not, but I'll get to that.
Oh.
I thought, okay, what's the least dense thing in the universe?
Hydrogen.
No, this is like a really dumb riddle that I've given you.
I don't know.
Nothing. Nothing at all.
A vacuum.
A vacuum.
Yeah.
And so I
think I was thrown off by thing.
Yeah. Well, no thing. It's got thing in the name.
Yeah, it's not a thing. Yeah. Nothing.
No
right. Yeah.
Thing is the least dense thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Thing. Yeah.
Point being, right, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so smart. What if we just had like a giant spherical empty container that would be so much lighter than air. Oh, you wouldn't have to be super huge. Turns out that's a bad idea because air pressure...
It's a lot.
Yeah, relative to nothing. Yes, that's the problem.
Ouch.
Every time I'm looking into this, I feel like a Mythbusters episode comes up. It almost feels like that Simpsons did it joke from other shows, but like, oh yeah, Mythbusters did it. And
Mythbusters did that.
There's a great episode where they show how incredible like the power of air pressure on a vessel that has a vacuum inside or very low pressure is, right? Like you can... It's a really cool experiment they do. You can actually take like an empty paint can, and then you take some boiling water, put some water inside, put it on a little pan, heat up the can and have some water in the pan as well, so you don't just like burn everything. But if you basically create steam inside this can, right, that's like high pressure, and then you cap it, and then you let it sit until it cools down and it condenses to water again, the pressure inside drops like crazy, and then the air pressure around it just crushes it. Yeah. And at a certain point, like, it doesn't matter how strong the container is you're going to design. You can't make one that's strong enough to withstand the crushing pressure, but also light enough that it is therefore buoyant.
Yeah.
Right? It's that trade-off of like, well, to resist the crush, it needs more material, more strength, which makes it a lot heavier, which means I need to make it bigger, which means like more pressure is acting all over the thing, and it's a losing battle. So this is why airships need some sort of gas inside. Right. And this brings us
ribs.
Depending on the design of the ship, because there's multiple ways to skin an airship. You can have a rigid airship.
That's how you know you're in another universe.
Right.
A parallel universe.
Because
if you show up and there are rigid airships everywhere, you're clearly in a parallel universe to your own.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because then the Hindenburg disaster didn't happen.
Yeah, it seems like that's a pivotal disaster in science fiction, because there's a lot of other parallel universes with lots of rigid airships. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. And this brings us to the first answer you had to my bad riddle, which is the lightest actual thing in the universe. And it is...
Not no thing, but a thing.
A thing.
Hydrogen.
Yes, hydrogen. So the element...
Hydra thing.
Element 1 on the periodic table, the most basic element. It's usually just a single proton with one electron orbiting around it, and it can form a gas when two of them shack up and share those electrons, right?
Yeah. It's super basic, loves iced coffee, shirtless gym selfies, you name it, about as basic as you can get.
Yeah, it's very, very light as a result because it's so basic. And therefore, in terms of if you just want a gas that will lift stuff by way of being light, it's the best one. So for hydrogen, a cubic meter of hydrogen is enough to lift about 1.1 kilograms. Or to put it in units that nobody understands,
freedom units,
a cubic foot is enough to lift 0.07 pounds.
Nobody knows what that means.
No. So let's stick with cubic meters and kilograms.
The system is flawed in so many levels. It's like everyone who talks about it is like, it's so much more intuitive. And I'm like, only at the one unit that you can think of, walking around feet. That's it. It's the only unit that is more intuitive. None of the other units are more intuitive.
Right.
You cannot convince me that teaspoons and pounds and all it's not.
Whereas with cubic meters, there's this website I found called The Measure of Things.
Hey, come on now. You're stealing my gag.
Yes, and it turns out a cubic meter is about 1 2/5 times as big as a hot tub. Or about
I love this website so much.
6.5 times as big as a bathtub. Wow, that must be a really big hot tub if it's...
That's a really big hot tub.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a hot tub. Yeah, that's a pretty big, that's a pretty big hot tub.
Oh, yeah. Or about 1/10 as big as a concrete mixer truck.
Oh, so 1/10 of a concrete mixer truck is a cubic meter. Got it.
Yeah,
Great.
there you go.
Totally
Whereas
makes sense.
kilograms to pounds, I feel like most people have some intuitive sense of that to kind of give you a rough estimate. I'm about 150 pounds, which in kilograms, it's about 68 kilograms, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
It's a little more than double. A little more than double. It's 2.2, but a little more than double.
I'm making it my resolution to do less math in an audio format for listeners. I'm trying so hard.
Fair.
Okay. So hydrogen, yes, it's the best for lifting stuff if that's all you care about. However, if you care about not catching on fire in a horrible burning mess, then you don't want to use it. Do you remember, speaking of famous quotes from old-timey films, do you remember the quote from the Hindenburg disaster?
Oh, the humanity!
Oh, the humanity, yeah.
I don't think anybody actually said that, though. Is that apocryphal?
I think it was a newsreel broadcast. I think it was real.
Yeah. It's terrible. So the quote from U.S. broadcaster Herbert Morrison during the Hindenburg disaster. Oh, it's unintelligible. It's flames crashing. Oh, 400 or 500 feet into the sky. Blah, 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 blah. Smoke, flames, and now a flame is crashing into the ground. Not quite to the mooring mast. Oh, the humanity. And all the passengers screaming. Wow, this is awful. Mm-hmm. So he definitely said it.
Yep.
Said in dismay, it says...
That's the liner note.
Yeah.
Can we get another read of that, but more upbeat?
We just need a little more energy.
Yeah.
Just a little more energy.
Speaking of energy, though, that's the problem with hydrogen. Yeah. It easily, readily combines with oxygen. Just takes a little bit of energy to kick it off, and then you get water, which is where the element gets its name. Hydrogen. It generates water. Yeah.
Huh. Cool.
Isn't that fun?
I learned a thing.
No, that's the goal. So the gas instead that other rigid airships and current blimps, which don't have a rigid structure, use, that's helium. Right. And helium is the next element up. It's 2 protons, 2 neutrons. So it's a bit heavier than hydrogen, but still a lot lighter than air. And the math is actually pretty simple. If you have about a cubic meter of helium, which is equivalent to 1 biblical cubit.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. 1 biblical cubit.
You can lift 1 kilogram.
Yeah, a kilogram.
Which is about the weight of our lizard at home. So, if that helps. That's not from the website.
Wow. Now that is a great unit.
How many Phillips can it lift?
How many Phillips is it?
Okay.
It's 1 Phillip.
1 Phillip. Okay, yeah. So a cubic meter of helium can lift about a kilogram. Now, as it turns out, it's fairly straightforward to know how many cubic meters then that you're going to need, right? Because, I mean, how many kilograms are you?
Me?
Anybody, you know.
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, like I said,
100. No, that seems like too many. I'm not 100.
That's
kilograms.
a lot.
Maybe I am. I don't know.
Well, for every kilogram that you are, you need another cubic meter of helium.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you're 68 kilograms?
Yep. Which is about 6.5 times as big as a concrete mixer truck.
Oh my gosh. So you need 6.5 concrete mixer trucks of helium.
So if you were
to lift up
to inflate me with helium, Yeah, that's what you would need to pump into me or strap to me somehow, some way. Just like a giant balloon of helium. Which is also, I thought, interesting because, like, I imagine the pufferfish, and if it were to somehow use helium instead, like, first of all, I considered a thing I'd never considered before, which is, Trace, how do we get helium?
I mean, we don't, I don't know.
Yeah. Have you considered it? Because hydrogen, that's kind of easy, right? If you just,
just run electricity through water,
right,
you're good.
And you'll separate the hydrogens and the oxygens from each other, right? But helium, the whole reason we want to use it for our airship is because it doesn't react with other molecules and cause fires, right?
Yeah.
But that also means it only exists as just helium, right?
Yeah.
Is there like a pocket underground? Like where?
I guess, yeah, we'd have to go get it somewhere.
Here's where it comes from. And as soon as I say it, you'll probably figure out why. We get it from decaying uranium.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
Because...
Oh, God, is it a heavier thing and it knocks a thing or something? It decays and then it comes...
Okay, I'll explain. There are multiple ways that radioactive elements can decay, right? There's alpha, beta, and gamma. I'll go in reverse order.
Right.
So in gamma
Hulk
decay, right, it shoots out a gamma ray, which is just an energy wave, electromagnetic energy.
Yeah.
Beta decay happens when a proton or neutron in the nucleus of the atom switches. If it was a proton, it becomes a neutron. If it was a neutron, it becomes a proton. And it emits a particle with like the corresponding charge, right?
Yeah.
And that's a beta particle. But if it goes from, say, a neutron to a proton, so it now needs to have a positive charge when it was neutral before, it'll emit an electron.
Yeah.
Alpha decay is when the nucleus loses an alpha particle, which is 2 protons and 2 neutrons, otherwise known as helium.
Helium. Great.
Did you realize that the party balloons that we fill up with helium are
sometimes put in my body and go,
this is really fun.
Right. It is the radiation from decayed uranium. Did you think of that? Because I didn't.
I didn't, but that's a party, baby.
Isn't that cool?
What a party. That is cool.
Yeah, decaying uranium over a very long time, obviously, can build up like a lot of helium gas, as it turns out. Which is,
and it's very inert.
Yeah.
How interesting.
But it's why there's talks of, well, helium is not really a sustainable thing to harvest then, because the half-life of uranium is long, so it takes a long time for these helium reserves to build up, and then we use them pretty quickly. And it was like, wow, this, it makes sense.
That's interesting.
But
makes total sense.
Never heard of it.
Never thought about it.
Anyway, so let's fill up your body sack with that.
6.5 cement trucks of it.
I mean, that's if you're 70 kilograms like I am. But if you are like a larger person, like 100 kilograms, you'll need 100 cubic meters, which is about 9 concrete mixer trucks.
Yeah.
The whole time I was doing this, I couldn't stop thinking about our listener from the Fart Rocket episode, Ricky.
Yeah, Ricky. Good old Ricky.
Who I think said, assume I'm 100 kilograms. And now I'm just picturing Ricky moving on, like, from his Fart Rocket idea to this.
Like, I'm picturing him standing in a big, like, desert lake situation. Again, very Mythbustery. Like, in the middle of nowhere, a great salt flat. And he does the fart experiment. So there's like an explosion on the ground. And he just walks over to the balloon, the human balloon experiment.
Suffice it to say, Ricky, though, would need either a very, very large balloon or a lot of smaller balloons, which, of course, this whole thing was tackled by Mythbusters at one point, back when they had the balloon boy child incident thing. And a lot of people fell for it because we as a population are not very scientifically literate and did not understand just how much helium you would need, but it's a lot. There's also hot air balloons, and those are just taking the air from their environment, but then they're heating it up. So when you make a gas hotter, it becomes less dense. And, if you have enough of it, you can float. But you need a lot more by comparison because air is so heavy. And then, of course,
Still heavy.
You'll need to keep putting energy into it because the air is going to cool down. So you always need that burner. And I think if we're going to try and modify a human to float...
To float like that. We probably don't want to put a fire burner underneath.
No, probably not a good idea. So I'm just going to discount that idea.
Yikes.
But the stumbling block I really had was, all right, like, how would we modify some person? And then I found a really cool article about a 9-year-old girl. Her name was Jessica Brett, and she had to have a surgery on her head. She had a big birthmark, a mole that doctors were worried would one day become cancerous. And so they wanted to remove it. And if it were somewhere else, you might just graft skin from another part of the body and call it good.
Yeah.
But because it was on her head and her scalp, they wanted her to still be able to grow hair. And so what they did was they inserted balloons under her scalp, and gradually they filled them with saline, and it stretched the skin out so the skin generated more skin and grew. And eventually there was enough there that they could remove the mole and then just, pull the skin over. So I'm thinking, like the hooded seal, we could slowly build a gigantic skin sack on our heads.
No!
That would be, again, 7 cement trucks in volume.
No! Where would you store it all?
I don't know.
How heavy would it be?
You'd have to be so good at folding. Like, I can't do a fitted sheet.
God.
So I'm just imagining trying to fold my head skin would be a nightmare.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Or like the hooded seal, have like a special little hood for it. But it would be a lot. It would be a lot of skin.
Yeah.
Also, if you got heavier, you'd have to make it bigger. Right?
More skin. Yeah, because you're adding all of the weight of the skin part.
Every kilogram you gain, every 2.2 pounds, you would need another cubic meter. You'd need another half tub
Julian.
of volume. There's a reason we don't fly. I mean, the math is pretty straightforward. No, I mean, like I talked about.
So gross,
you'd
Julian.
Need 70 cubic meters.
You'd probably need more because that's heavy stuff. That skin.
Also, to put it in context, I mean, the human body typically on average takes up only about 2 cubic feet, which is about 0.6 cubic meters, and you would need 70. So your body would have to be over 100 times more voluminous.
Wow. I remember we did a video once around Halloween that skin doesn't tear. It was a really uncomfortable video, but skin does not tear. It's not a particularly easy thing to tear. Like if you were to have a paper of skin and you tried to tear it, you would not be able to. It's really strong, but it also stretches. And I just looked it up because I was curious, and there was a study called Stretching Skin, the Physiological Limit and Beyond. And they said it can stretch about 4 times its surface area.
Oh, that's
good.
So
like but that's the limit of the skin stretching, not the limit of how comfortable you would be within stretching.
Still, that means we need 4 times less surface area.
Yeah. I think conservatively, let's say double the surface area at minimum, or like half the surface area or whatever.
Right.
Instead of 4. But yikes, gross. Ew. Blah, blah.
Still gross. You need 70 cubic meters. So 70 meters cubed equals 4/3 pi r cubed. Now I need to find the radius of what this sphere would be. Assuming a spherical balloon head, the radius of this balloon head would be about 2.55 meters, 2.56 meters. That's your radius.
Okay, that's pretty good size.
Okay.
That's a good size radius.
So then,
not as big as I thought, actually.
The surface area is 4 pi r squared. So we'll just square this number and then multiply it by 4 and then multiply it again by pi. So it'd have a surface area of 82 square meters.
82 square meters. Okay, and what I have just done while you were doing that is about a square meter of skin, 1 square meter of skin, weighs about 4.5 pounds, or about 2 kilograms.
Okay.
So the balloon itself would weigh...
You need another cubic meter.
You need another cubic meter.
Okay. All right, but that's not so bad. But this
No.
is assuming that we're not stretching the skin out. So if it's 82 square meters, but skin can stretch at its max 4 times, you'd need about 20 square meters of extra skin on your head, which is about 5 times as big as a king-sized bed.
Oh my God.
So you would need to fit
That's
5 fitted sheets of skin neatly on your head.
It'd be like this. It'd be like.
But I think with that, you would be able to float. But now we run into another problem. Trace, what happens to air as you go higher up in altitude?
It gets colder.
And
Thinner.
what? Yeah, it becomes
Or more rarefied,
less
as
dense.
they say. Oh, gosh.
So let's say you actually get your giant head balloon up and inflated, and you're starting to leave the ground. As you get higher, you become more buoyant.
Oh, no.
So you would need a way to counteract that. You would either need to lose some of this precious uranium radiation
Or you're just
fuel.
you're just pinching your nose the whole time, and every now and then you're like,
Or have you ever considered how does a blimp, like the Goodyear blimp,
fan.
how do they? Well, that's for moving around, like actually, flying.
How do they
But
go up and
How do
down?
they go up and down? Yeah, you
Do they just...
never thought about that,
they
did
just-
you?
I always thought they just released some, but that's hot air balloons because it's just air.
Right, hot
Just
air balloons
air,
can
so
do
you
that.
just release some.
But our
So
precious,
you can't release the helium.
precious helium, no, and then we'd never be able to go up again, right? So it's actually
Yeah.
really clever. Inside, like the Goodyear blimp, there are smaller balloons called ballonets. And these can be inflated with outside air, so they start taking up space inside the blimp. So that's going to make the helium in the blimp more dense and therefore not give you as much of a buoyant upward pressure.
How clever.
Isn't it?
Like a swim
It
bladder.
is like a swim bladder.
Julian!
Oh, it all comes back.
You brought it full circle, buddy.
But that would mean, that's right, more skin. You would need some sort. I mean, the good news is at least this could be powered by like your lungs or something, but you would need like a tube up to your head sack or wherever this giant balloon is coming out of. You would need
this person is grotesque.
even people in Oz would be like, oh, it's horrible.
Oh, jeez. Oh, God.
Flying monkeys, attack.
Just melt me. At that point, please,
But
if
yeah.
I start to have a skin balloon,
You-
just throw me a bucket of water on me.
with
I'm
another
done.
skin balloon inside of it for ballast.
Ugh, a ballonnaise for my head.
So yeah, I hope Isaiah that tackled your question. You would need a huge volume, which would be a big surface area of skin, and then you would also need a way to control it, which would probably involve another internal air sac. And you can't just use ambient air for buoyancy unless you heat it or you get a lighter element. Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow.
That's your answer. And that was
Jeez.
a lot of fun
Wow.
to picture.
This episode is a ride. This is a ride.
Like on a hot air balloon?
Like, we talked about cutting people into pieces and inflating heads and
Walking corpses.
and seals that spit out their own noses.
Is this a really early Halloween episode?
I guess it is Halloween in July or whatever,
Oh, man.
whenever this is coming out. Whew, wow, man! I hope you all enjoyed that because that was a whole thing.
Whole thing.
Man, oh man. Whew. Okay, well, while we're all coming down from that, no pun intended. I just want to say thank you all for listening to this episode of That's Absurd, Please Elaborate. The show was created and written and produced by me, Trace Dominguez.
And me, Julian Huguet.
It was also produced and edited by the wonderful and probably deflated at this moment, but we can't say tomorrow, Kyle Sisk.
He's our good witch of the north. Audio witch.
Audio Witch. Ooh, yeah, good one. Nice.
Special thanks to listeners who submitted questions for this episode, Isaiah and Nick. If you'd like to submit questions, look for the form down in our show notes, or you can email us at hello@that'sabsurdshow.com. You can go to our website, that'sabsurdshow.com/ask. You can even call us We have a phone number now. It's 302-TAPE-SHOW, TAPESHO, and you can go ahead and leave us that voice recording of your question, or just nice things. We got a message today from Gerald. We answered his question a few episodes ago, and he just called up to be like, thanks, I enjoyed it. I told my friends and family to listen, and it was like, Gerald, that's so nice. We shared it in our little internal chat, and we all had a nice celebratory moment. So thank you for that. It's so fun to make this and to know that people out there are having fun along with us. It's why we do it. We have such a great time.
Thank you. And if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. You can leave us a star or a heart or a thumbs up or follow the show or whatever. If you like the show a lot, give us 5 stars. If you think the show is crappy, give us a star. That's fine. Julian has already brought our average down at some point early in our run.
Forever.
This reminds me of high school when I did really bad my freshman year, and I was just trying to make up for it the rest of the time in high school, and that was fine.
Or when I didn't shower, as we've covered.
But please, if you like the show, share it with your friends. That's the most important thing you can do, is tell your friends about our show, because that's how we grow. We couldn't do this without you, and thank you so much for those of you who have rated us and submitted a review. And also, again, very, very special thanks to people who were submitting questions, because we can't do this show without them. We have so many questions in our awesome questions database. We're getting new ones all the time, and we love it. So thank you so much for that.
It's such a blast. Finally, special thank you to those listening on Nebula. Nebula listeners get access to ad-free versions of episodes, and they can even support us and other independent creators like us. If you're not a Nebula member yet, you can join Nebula at go.nebula.tv/that'sabsurdshow.
And as we always say at the end of every episode, don't be a salty witch.
That's it. We don't need to do multiple. That's my favorite. You salty witch.
Followed by my reflection. For the record, I know Dracula doesn't have a reflection, but it can get wet. It takes you